The morning sun hadn't yet burned through the Montana mist when Charlotte Reed stepped off the stagecoach in Silver Creek, her worn carpetbag clutched tight against her chest. 23 years old and completely alone in the world, she'd traveled 2,000 miles from Boston with nothing but a letter of reference from a woman who'd never met her and $27 sewn into the hem of her skirt. The town was smaller than she'd imagined, smaller and rougher. Men in dusty clothes stared as she stood on the wooden sidewalk, and Charlotte felt her cheeks burn. Back home, she'd been invisible, the plain spinster daughter caring for her elderly father until consumption took him 3 months ago. Here, she was a curiosity. "You the new hire for the Dawson farm?" Charlotte turned to find a weathered man with kind eyes watching her from beside a wagon. She nodded, clutching her bag tighter. "I'm Tom Bradley, the feed store owner. Ethan sent me to fetch you." His smile was gentle. "Don't look so frightened, miss. Ethan's a good man. Quiet, but good." She climbed onto the wagon seat, smoothing her plain grey dress. The letter had been brief. Ethan Dawson needed someone to help with cooking and light housework. Room and board plus $20 a month. It wasn't charity, she told herself. It was honest work. The ride took nearly an hour, the road winding through open rangeland that seemed to stretch forever under the vast sky. Charlotte had never seen so much space in her life. It made her feel both impossibly small and strangely free. "There," Tom pointed ahead. The Dawson farm sat in a valley between rolling hills, a modest house with a wide porch and several outbuildings scattered around it. But what caught Charlotte's attention were the horses. Dozens of them in various corrals, their coats gleaming in the strengthening sunlight. "Ethan raises horses," Tom explained. "Best in 3 counties. Loses money on half of them, though. Can't seem to sell the damaged ones. Takes in strays, orphans, anything broken." He glanced at her sideways. "Suppose he's got a soft heart under all that gruffness." As they pulled up to the house, a man emerged from the barn. Charlotte's breath caught. He was enormous. At least 6.5 feet tall, with shoulders that seemed to span the doorway. Dark hair curled slightly at his collar, and several days' worth of beard shadowed his jaw. He moved toward them with long, easy strides, and Charlotte felt an unfamiliar flutter in her stomach. "This is Miss Reed," Tom called out cheerfully. The giant man stopped a few feet from the wagon, his dark eyes settling on Charlotte. For a long moment, he just looked at her, and she couldn't read his expression at all. "You're smaller than I expected," he finally said, his voice a deep rumble. Charlotte lifted her chin. "I assure you, Mr. Dawson, my size has no bearing on my ability to cook or keep house." Something flickered in his eyes, almost amusement. "Didn't mean offense, just the work's harder out here than in the city." "I'm not afraid of hard work." "Good." He reached up, and before she could protest, his large hands closed around her waist, and he lifted her down from the wagon as if she weighed nothing at all. Her hands instinctively gripped his forearms, feeling solid muscle beneath the worn fabric of his shirt. He set her down quickly and stepped back as though he'd burned himself. "Thank you, Tom," Ethan said, his voice rougher than before. "I'll take it from here." After Tom departed, Charlotte stood awkwardly holding her bag, while Ethan seemed equally uncertain. He cleared his throat. "House is, well, it's clean enough, but I'm not much for decorating. Your room's upstairs, second door on the right." He paused. "There's a lock on the door. Thought you'd want that, for your privacy." The consideration in his words surprised her. "Thank you, Mr. Dawson." "Ethan," he corrected. "No need for formality. It's just us out here. Just us." The word sent another flutter through her chest. He showed her through the house. It was indeed clean, if sparse. The kitchen was well equipped, the furniture solid and well made. Everything spoke of a man who lived alone, but took care of what was his. "I eat simple," Ethan explained, standing in the kitchen doorway as though afraid to come too far inside. "Biscuits, bacon, beans, whatever's easy. But if you can cook proper, I'd appreciate it." "I can cook," Charlotte assured him. Her mother had taught her well before dying when Charlotte was 16. "Good." He shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. "I should show you the rest. The well's out back. There's a root cellar. Chickens need feeding morning and evening, but I can do that if you'd rather not. I don't mind chickens." "Right." Another pause. "I'm in the barn most days, sunrise to sundown usually. I'll come in for meals, but you won't see much of me otherwise." Charlotte nodded, trying not to feel disappointed. What had she expected? This was a job, nothing more. "I'll let you settle in," Ethan said. "Supper around 6, if that suits you." "That suits me fine." He started to leave, then turned back. "Miss Reed, Charlotte, I'm glad you're here. The house has been too quiet." Before she could respond, he was gone, his heavy footsteps crossing the porch and fading toward the barn. Charlotte carried her bag upstairs. Her room was small but comfortable, with a window overlooking the corrals. She could see Ethan already back among the horses, moving with surprising grace for such a large man. She unpacked her few belongings, changed into a work dress, and headed downstairs to explore the kitchen properly. There was a good supply of staples, and she found a ham hanging in the cold room. She could make a decent supper. As she worked, Charlotte found herself humming. She'd always hummed while cooking, a habit her father had loved. The familiar melody calmed her nerves about this new life. She was peeling potatoes when she heard it, a soft nicker from outside the kitchen window. Looking up, Charlotte saw a horse standing just beyond the fence, a beautiful chestnut mare with a white blaze. The mare was watching her intently. Without thinking, Charlotte started to sing, her voice soft and clear, an old lullaby her mother used to sing. The mare's ears pricked forward. By the time Charlotte finished the first verse, 3 more horses had gathered at the fence. "Well, hello," she whispered, moving to the window. "Aren't you beautiful?" She sang another verse, and the horses seemed to settle, their dark eyes fixed on her face. They've never done that before. Charlotte spun around to find Ethan standing in the kitchen doorway, staring at her with an expression she couldn't name. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "I didn't mean to disturb them. I was just—" "No." He shook his head slowly. "Don't apologize. That was— They never come to the house like that. Most of them are skittish. Been hurt before I got them." He moved closer to the window, close enough that Charlotte could smell leather and hay and something uniquely him. "They trust you." "I've always liked animals," Charlotte admitted. "My father said I had a gift." Ethan looked down at her, and this close, she could see that his eyes weren't just dark. They were a deep brown flecked with gold. Would you mind singing to them sometimes? I think they need it." "Of course." Her voice came out softer than she intended. "I'd be happy to." Something passed between them in that moment, something Charlotte didn't have words for. Then Ethan stepped back, the spell broken. I'll be in the barn, if you need anything." "Supper at 6, Charlotte reminded him. "I'll be here." He left, and Charlotte returned to her cooking, but she couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd looked at her, the way he'd said the horses needed her singing. That evening, Ethan came in promptly at 6, his hair damp from washing, wearing a clean shirt. Charlotte had set the table with care, and the meal she'd prepared was the best she could manage with what was available. Roasted ham, mashed potatoes with gravy, green beans she'd found in the cellar, and fresh biscuits. Ethan stopped in the doorway of the dining room, staring at the table. "Something wrong?" Charlotte asked, suddenly worried she'd overstepped. "No." His voice was rough. It's been a long time since this table was used proper, since there was someone to cook for." "Your wife?" The question escaped before Charlotte could stop it. "She died 4 years ago. Childbirth, the baby too." He said it matter-of-factly, but Charlotte heard the old pain underneath. "I'm so sorry. Life out here is hard." He pulled out a chair and sat, looking lost at his own table. Sarah was delicate. Too delicate for this life, though she tried. I shouldn't have brought her here. Charlotte sat across from him. "You can't blame yourself for that." "Ah, can't I?" He looked at her then, really looked at her. She was so young, so full of dreams, and I killed her with those dreams. "She loved you," Charlotte said softly. "I'm sure of that. And love makes us brave enough to take risks." Ethan's jaw worked, and for a moment she thought he might cry, but he just nodded and reached for the food. They ate in silence for a few minutes, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Charlotte found herself stealing glances at him, noting the way his large hands handled the fork with surprising delicacy, the way his face softened as he tasted her cooking. "This is wonderful," he finally said. "Best meal I've had in years." "Thank you." "No, I mean it." He met her eyes. "You're talented, Charlotte. You could probably get work in a fine house in San Francisco or Denver." "Why come all the way out here to cook for a horse farmer?" Charlotte considered lying, but something about his honesty deserved the same in return. "Because fine houses want references I don't have. They want someone younger and prettier. They want—" She trailed off. "What?" Ethan prompted gently. "They want someone who hasn't been rejected so many times she's lost count." The words came out bitter. "I'm too plain, too old, too poor, too everything. This was the only offer I received in 3 months of looking." "Then they were fools." Charlotte looked up, startled. "You're not plain," Ethan continued, his voice firm. "You've got kind eyes and a smile that makes my horses come running. You've got skill and courage enough to travel across the country alone. Any man who can't see that isn't worth your time." Heat flooded Charlotte's face. Thank you. Just truth." He returned to his meal as if he hadn't just said the kindest words anyone had spoken to her in years. After supper, Charlotte insisted on cleaning up alone. Ethan hovered for a moment, clearly uncertain, then retreated to the porch with a cup of coffee. When Charlotte finished, she found him sitting on the porch steps, staring out at the darkening valley. The horses had settled for the night, but she could hear their soft sounds carrying on the evening breeze. "May I join you?" she asked. He shifted over immediately, making room. Charlotte sat, careful to maintain a proper distance, though something in her wanted to sit closer. "It's beautiful here," she said. "It is." Ethan's voice was quiet. "But it's lonely too. I forget that sometimes until there's someone else to remind me what company feels like." "How long have you been alone?" 4 years since Sarah died, but I was alone before that too, in different ways." He glanced at her. "Marriage isn't always companionship." "No," Charlotte agreed, thinking of her parents' quiet, dutiful relationship. "I suppose it isn't." "Did you ever come close to marrying, I mean?" Charlotte laughed, but it held no humor. "No, I wasn't the kind of girl men looked at twice. My father needed care, and by the time he died, I was well past the age when men seek wives. 23 isn't old. It is in Boston, especially when you're plain and poor. You keep saying that word. Ethan turned to face her fully. Plain. But you're not. You've got pretty hair like honey and sunshine. Your eyes are the color of the sky before a storm. And when you smile, really smile. He shook his head. Any man who called you plain was blind. Charlotte's heart hammered in her chest. Ethan! I'm sorry. He stood abruptly. That was inappropriate. You work for me. I shouldn't have said those things. I didn't mind, Charlotte said quickly, standing as well. I'm not used to hearing such things. They stood facing each other in the gathering dark, and Charlotte could feel the tension thrumming between them like a living thing. I should go check the horses, Ethan said, his voice rough. Good night, Charlotte. Good night. She watched him walk toward the barn, his figure disappearing into shadow, and pressed a hand to her racing heart. What was happening to her? The days fell into a rhythm. Charlotte rose early, made breakfast, and spent her mornings cleaning and preparing for the day's meals. Afternoons, she found herself drawn to the kitchen window, watching Ethan work with the horses. He was mesmerizing to watch. Despite his size, he moved with patience and gentleness around even the most skittish animals. She watched him spend an hour just sitting in a corral with a scarred gelding, not moving, barely breathing, until the horse finally approached him. And every day, Charlotte sang while she worked. The horses learned to gather near the house during her morning songs, and she saw Ethan smile more than once when he noticed them. 2 weeks into her employment, Charlotte was hanging laundry when she heard a commotion from the barn. Dropping the sheet she held, she hurried over to find Ethan kneeling beside a black mare, his hands gentle on her swollen belly. "Is she all right?" Charlotte asked from the doorway. "She's in labor." Ethan looked up, and she saw worry in his eyes. "It's too early. The foal might not make it." "What can I do?" "Nothing. There's nothing to do but wait." But his voice shook slightly. Charlotte moved closer, kneeling in the straw beside him. The mare was breathing hard, her eyes rolling with fear. "May I?" Charlotte reached out slowly, and when Ethan nodded, she placed her hand on the mare's neck and began to sing. Soft and low, a lullaby her mother had sung during storms. The mare's breathing slowed. Her eyes found Charlotte's face and held. "Keep singing," Ethan whispered. "It's helping." Charlotte sang through the next hour as the mare labored. Ethan's hands worked with practiced skill, and once, when things got difficult, his hand found Charlotte's knee and squeezed. She squeezed back, still singing, and felt him relax slightly. Finally, with a rush, the foal was born. Tiny and wet and perfect. "It's a colt," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. He helped the mare, then sat back on his heels, watching as she began to clean her baby. "He's going to make it. They both are." Charlotte realized she was crying. That was beautiful. Ethan turned to her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "Thank you for being here, for singing. I don't think she would have stayed calm without you. I didn't do anything. You did everything." His hand came up, fingers hovering near her face, as if he wanted to touch her but didn't dare. "Charlotte, The mare nickered, drawing their attention back. The moment passed, but Charlotte felt its echo in her racing heart. They stayed with the mare and foal until both were resting comfortably, then walked back to the house together in the late afternoon sun. "I should start supper," Charlotte said, though she didn't want this closeness to end. "And I should clean up." Ethan paused on the porch. "But Charlotte, thank you. Not just for today, but for all of it. Having you here, it's—" He trailed off, searching for words. "It's made everything better." Before she could respond, he disappeared into the house. Charlotte stood on the porch, touching her chest where her heart beat wildly, and admitted to herself what she'd been denying for weeks. She was falling in love with Ethan Dawson. The realization terrified her. This was supposed to be a job, a new start, not a path to heartbreak. Men like Ethan didn't fall for women like her. Did they? But that night at supper, when their eyes met across the table, Charlotte saw something that gave her hope. Something warm and wondering in his gaze that mirrored what she felt. After the meal, Ethan didn't retreat to the barn. Instead, he helped her with the dishes, their arms brushing in the small kitchen, sending sparks through Charlotte every time. "The new colt needs a name," Ethan said as he dried a plate. "You should name him. He's yours. What about Hope?" Ethan looked at her. "Because that's what I felt when he was born. Hope that things could be different, better." "That's a beautiful name." They finished the dishes in comfortable silence, then found themselves back on the porch, sitting closer than they had before. "Charlotte," Ethan began, his voice uncertain, "I need to tell you something, and I don't want you to feel obligated in any way. You can say no, and nothing will change between us. You'll still have a job here as long as you want it." Her mouth went dry. "All right. These past few weeks, having you here, it's reminded me what it feels like to not be alone, to have someone to talk to share meals with, to—" He stopped, taking a breath. "You make me remember that I'm not just a farmer, that I'm a man. And I know I'm not what women want. I'm too big, too rough, too much of everything. But I can't help how I feel." "How do you feel?" Charlotte whispered. "Like I've been waiting my whole life for you to walk through my door." His hand found hers, engulfing it. "Like my horses have been waiting too. Like everything was just marking time until you arrived." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. "Ethan, I know I shouldn't say these things. You're young and you could do so much better. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel this way. I needed you to know. You think I could do better?" Charlotte turned to face him fully. "Ethan, do you know what I see when I look at you?" He shook his head. "I see a man who takes in broken horses because he can't stand to see anything suffer. A man who builds locks on doors so his housekeeper feels safe. A man who sits in the dirt for hours waiting for a scared animal to trust him." Her voice broke. "I see the most beautiful person I've ever known." Ethan stared at her, and in the moonlight she saw hope and disbelief warring in his expression. "You mean that? Every word?" Charlotte squeezed his hand. "I came here expecting a job. I didn't expect to find this." "What is this?" he asked softly. "I don't know." Charlotte's heart pounded. "But I want to find out." Ethan raised their joined hands, pressing his lips to her knuckles with a gentleness that made her shiver. "I'll be patient. I'll court you proper. I won't rush—" "Ethan," Charlotte interrupted, "I don't need rushing, but I don't need excessive patience either. I'm not made of glass." Something dark and hot flashed in his eyes. "Charlotte, if you knew the things I think about when I see you in my kitchen, wearing my mother's apron, singing to my horses." He shook his head. "You deserve better than a man who wants to kiss you until you can't remember your own name." Heat flooded Charlotte's body. "What if that's what I want too?" "You don't know what you're saying, don't I?" She shifted closer, emboldened by desire she'd never felt before. "I'm 23 years old, Ethan. I know my own mind, and my mind is telling me that I want you to kiss me." "Charlotte." Her name was almost a groan. "Please." That single word broke something in him. His hand came up to cup her face, his palm rough against her cheek, his thumb tracing her lower lip with devastating tenderness. "I've wanted to do this since the day you arrived," he whispered, "since you stood in my yard with your chin up, telling me your size didn't matter." "Then stop talking and do it." Ethan leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. But Charlotte didn't move, didn't breathe, until his lips touched hers. The kiss was gentle at first, almost reverent, but when Charlotte sighed against his mouth, Ethan deepened it, his other hand coming up to frame her face, holding her as if she were precious beyond measure. Charlotte had been kissed before, brief pecks from boys who'd lost interest quickly. But this was different. This was Ethan pouring 4 years of loneliness and longing into touching her, and Charlotte answering with every lonely night she'd spent, believing no one would ever want her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I should apologize," he murmured, "but I can't. I'm not sorry." "Good, because I'd have to be angry with you if you were." He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. "You're remarkable, you know that. You make me feel remarkable." Charlotte pulled back to look at him. "You make me feel like I matter." "You do matter." Ethan's expression was fierce. "You matter more than you could possibly know." They sat together on the porch for hours, talking and occasionally kissing, until the moon was high and Charlotte was yawning despite herself. "You should sleep," Ethan said reluctantly. "You'll be exhausted tomorrow." "So will you. I'm used to it." He stood, then helped her up, his hands lingering on hers. "Charlotte, about what happens now." "We don't have to decide everything tonight," Charlotte said. "We can take this one day at a time." "As long as there are more days like this one." Ethan brought her hand to his lips again. "Good night, Charlotte." "Good night, Ethan." Charlotte went to her room in a daze, touching her lips, still feeling the warmth of his kiss. She'd come to Montana expecting nothing, and now she had everything. The next morning, Charlotte woke to find a bouquet of wildflowers on her doorstep. No note, but she knew who'd left them. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Charlotte's life. Ethan courted her with a sweetness that made her heart ache. He brought her flowers, carved her a new spoon when he noticed hers was wearing out, and spent every evening on the porch with her, talking about everything and nothing. And he kissed her. Oh, how he kissed her. Slowly and thoroughly, as if he had all the time in the world and wanted to spend it all learning the taste of her mouth. But he never pushed for more, even when Charlotte made it clear she wanted him to. He was determined to do things right, he said, to prove he was worthy of her. One afternoon, Charlotte was in the garden when she heard horses approaching. Looking up, she saw 3 riders coming up the road, and her heart sank when she recognized the type, rough men, the kind who brought trouble. She hurried inside, watching from the window as they approached Ethan in the yard. "Dawson," the leader called out. "Heard you got yourself a woman now. What do you want, Cutter?" Ethan's voice was cold. "Just being neighborly. Wanted to see what kind of woman would take up with a man like you." The man's gaze found the house and Charlotte shrank back. "She here? That's none of your business. Come now, Dawson. No need to be unfriendly. We could make you a good offer. Pretty woman like that must be worth something. We could take her off your hands, save you the trouble of—" Charlotte didn't hear the rest, because Ethan moved faster than she'd ever seen him move, grabbing Cutter by the shirt and hauling him off his horse. "If you ever speak about her that way again," Ethan said, his voice deadly quiet, "I will break every bone in your worthless body. Do you understand me?" The other men reached for their guns, but Ethan didn't flinch. "Go ahead. Draw, but your friend dies first." The tension stretched for a long moment, then Cutter laughed nervously. "Easy, Dawson, just making conversation." "Then converse somewhere else." Ethan released him with a shove. "And don't come back." The men rode off, and Charlotte ran outside to find Ethan standing with his hands clenched into fists, breathing hard. "Ethan, I'm sorry you had to see that." He didn't look at her. "There are men around here they don't respect much. I should have warned you." "You protected me," Charlotte said softly, moving to stand in front of him. "That's all that matters. I'd kill anyone who tried to hurt you." The words were simple, absolute. "You know that, don't you?" "I know." Charlotte took his face in her hands, feeling the tension in his jaw. "I'm safe with you. I've always been safe with you." Ethan pulled her against his chest, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. But Charlotte didn't mind. She wrapped her arms around him as best she could, given his size, and held on just as tight. "I love you," Ethan said into her hair. "I know it's too soon, and I shouldn't say it, but I love you, Charlotte. You've changed everything." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too. So much it scares me." He pulled back to look at her, wonder in his eyes. "Say it again." "I love you, Ethan Dawson. I love your gentleness and your strength. I love the way you care for broken things. I love—" He kissed her, cutting off her words, and this kiss was different from all the others. It was claiming and desperate and full of promise. When they broke apart, Ethan was trembling. "Marry me." Charlotte's breath caught. "What? I know it's fast. I know you deserve a proper courtship, but I can't. I don't want to wait anymore." His hands framed her face. "Marry me, Charlotte. Make this house a home. Make me a whole man again." "Yes." The word came without hesitation. "Yes, I'll marry you." Ethan's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. He picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing, and when he set her down, he kissed her again. "When?" he asked against her lips. "As soon as possible." Charlotte grinned. "Unless you want to wait." "God, no," he laughed. "Tomorrow. We'll ride into town tomorrow and find a preacher." "Tomorrow, then." They spent the rest of the day in a happy daze, making plans, stealing kisses, and imagining their future together. That night, as they sat on the porch, Ethan pulled Charlotte onto his lap, holding her close. "I never thought I'd have this again," he admitted. "After Sarah died, I thought I was done with happiness, done with love. But then you stepped off that stagecoach and everything changed. I was so scared that day," Charlotte confessed. "I thought I was going to work for some crusty old farmer who'd barely notice I existed. Instead, you got me." Ethan's smile was self-deprecating. "Instead, I got everything I didn't know I needed." Charlotte touched his face. "You, this place, those beautiful horses. A life I never dreamed possible." "Our life," Ethan corrected. "From tomorrow on, it's our life." "Our life," Charlotte repeated, loving the sound of it. They married the next day in a simple ceremony at the small church in Silver Creek. Charlotte wore her best dress, and Ethan had clearly made an effort, his hair neatly combed, his shirt pressed. Tom Bradley and his wife served as witnesses, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan's kiss was tender and full of promise. The ride back to the farm felt different. This was their home now. Truly, Charlotte was Mrs. Dawson, and the knowledge filled her with joy. That evening, as Charlotte prepared supper, Ethan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "My wife," he murmured against her neck. I like the sound of that. So do I. Charlotte leaned back against him, marveling at how perfectly she fit against his large frame. Charlotte, Ethan's voice grew serious. About tonight. I want you to know that we don't have to. I mean, if you're not ready, Charlotte turned in his arms, placing a finger on his lips. Ethan, I've been ready since the day you first kissed me. I want this. I want you. The heat in his eyes made her shiver. I'll be gentle. I promise. I know you will. Charlotte stood on her toes to kiss him. I trust you completely. Supper was a hurried affair, both of them too aware of what would come after. When the dishes were done, Ethan took Charlotte's hand and led her upstairs. Their wedding night was everything Charlotte had hoped for, and more. Ethan was indeed gentle, but also passionate, showing her pleasures she'd never imagined. And when she cried out his name, he held her close and whispered words of love against her skin. Afterward, lying in his arms, Charlotte felt complete for the first time in her life. "Are you all right?" Ethan asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "I'm perfect." Charlotte smiled up at him. "Absolutely perfect." "I don't deserve you," Ethan said, his voice rough with emotion, "but I'm going to spend every day trying to be worthy of you." "You already are." Charlotte kissed his chest right over his heart. "You've always been worthy, Ethan. You just couldn't see it." The months that followed were blissful. Charlotte threw herself into making the house a proper home, adding curtains and rugs and small touches of beauty. She planted flowers in the neglected beds beside the porch, herbs in the kitchen garden, and spent hours choosing just the right fabric for new curtains in town. Ethan watched her transform his house with wonder in his eyes. "You're making it beautiful," he told her one evening as she hung the last of the curtains. "It was always beautiful," Charlotte corrected. "I'm just helping it show." The horses thrived under her daily songs, and even the most skittish ones began to trust her. There was a grey mare named Shadow, who'd been beaten by her previous owner and would shy away from any human touch. But after weeks of Charlotte singing to her, the mare finally approached, pressing her nose into Charlotte's hand. Ethan had tears in his eyes when he saw it. "I've been trying to reach her for 6 months, he said, his voice thick, "and you did it in weeks." "She just needed to know she was safe," Charlotte said softly. "We all do." One afternoon, a wealthy rancher from 2 counties over arrived, interested in buying several of Ethan's horses. Charlotte served them coffee while they talked business in the parlor. "That little grey mare," the rancher said, "the skittish one. What would you take for her?" Ethan's expression closed. "Shadow's not for sale." "Come now, Dawson. Everything's for sale for the right price. She's pretty enough, and I've got a daughter who'd love her." "She's been hurt," Ethan said firmly. "She needs patience and gentleness. I won't sell her to someone who might not give her that." The rancher's face reddened. "You saying I'd mistreat an animal?" "I'm saying Shadow stays here." Ethan's voice was calm but final. "I've got other horses you might be interested in, but not her." After the rancher left, somewhat mollified by purchasing 2 other horses for a good price, Charlotte found Ethan in Shadow's corral, brushing the mare's coat. "You turned down a lot of money," she observed. "Some things aren't about money." Ethan didn't look up from his work. "Shadow trusts us now. I won't betray that for any amount of gold." Charlotte's heart swelled with love for this man who put the well-being of damaged creatures above profit. The seasons changed, autumn painting the valley in shades of gold and crimson. Charlotte and Ethan fell into an even deeper rhythm of partnership. In the evenings after supper, Ethan would read aloud while Charlotte mended or knitted. His deep voice made even simple newspaper articles sound like poetry. "You have a beautiful voice," Charlotte told him one night. He looked up, surprised. "Me? I sound like a bear with a sore throat." "You sound like home," Charlotte corrected, and watched his eyes soften with emotion. They celebrated their first Thanksgiving together, inviting Tom Bradley and his wife Mary for dinner. Charlotte cooked for days, determined to show her gratitude for everything Tom had done in bringing her to the farm. "This is wonderful," Mary exclaimed over the roasted turkey and sweet potato pie. "Ethan, you're a lucky man." "Don't I know it?" Ethan replied, his hand finding Charlotte's under the table. As winter approached, Charlotte taught Ethan to dance in their parlor, humming the tunes her mother had taught her. He was awkward at first, worried about stepping on her feet with his large boots, but gradually he relaxed. "I never danced with Sarah," he admitted as they swayed together. "She asked once, but I was too self-conscious about my size." "I love your size," Charlotte said. "When you hold me, I feel completely safe." Ethan pulled her closer. "You are safe, always." The first snow fell in late November, transforming the farm into a wonderland. Charlotte stood at the kitchen window, watching the flakes drift down, when Ethan came up behind her. "Come outside," he urged. "I want to show you something." He led her to the main corral where the horses were gathered, their breath creating clouds in the cold air. As Charlotte began to sing a Christmas carol, the snow fell around them and the horses moved closer, creating a circle. "It's magical," Charlotte whispered. "You're magical," Ethan corrected, kissing her snow-dusted hair. Christmas brought more joy. Charlotte decorated the house with pine boughs and ribbon, and Ethan surprised her by carving a beautiful wooden music box. "Open it," he urged on Christmas morning. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a delicate gold locket. Charlotte gasped. "It was my mother's," Ethan explained. "She'd want you to have it. Want you to be part of our family's story." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears as he fastened it around her neck. "Thank you. For this. For everything. For choosing me. Charlotte, you chose me too. That's what makes it perfect." They made love that night with the tenderness of deep familiarity and the passion of new lovers, the firelight casting dancing shadows on the walls. January brought brutal cold and heavy snows. For days they were trapped inside, but Charlotte didn't mind. She and Ethan spent the time talking, reading, making plans for the spring. "I want to expand the northern pasture," Ethan said one evening. "Take in more rescue horses. There are so many that need help." "Then we'll do it," Charlotte agreed. "Whatever you need." "What about what you need?" Ethan asked. "What are your dreams, Charlotte?" She thought for a moment. "I'd like to start a small school here, for the children of the valley. There are families scattered all around, and the nearest school is 15 miles away. We could use the old barn, fix it up." Ethan's face lit up. "That's a wonderful idea. We'll start planning in the spring." But it was during a February blizzard that Charlotte first suspected she might be carrying a child. She'd been feeling queasy in the mornings, and her monthly courses were late. She didn't say anything to Ethan yet, not wanting to raise his hopes until she was certain. When the storm finally broke and the doctor could make it out to the farm for a scheduled visit to check on Tom Bradley's wife, Charlotte quietly asked him to examine her as well. "Congratulations, Mrs. Dawson," Dr. Henderson said with a smile. "I'd say you're about 2 months along. Baby should come in late August or early September." Charlotte's hand went to her stomach, wonder flooding through her. A baby. Their baby. But the greatest joy came when Charlotte realized she was pregnant. She told Ethan one evening as they sat watching the sunset, his hand resting on her still flat stomach. "A baby." His voice shook. "Charlotte, are you certain?" "I'm certain." "Min," she searched his face anxiously. "I know this might bring back painful memories." "No." Ethan pulled her close. "This is different. You're different. We're going to be fine, all three of us." "You're not scared?" "Terrified," he admitted, "but also happier than I ever thought possible." That night, Ethan held Charlotte extra close in bed, his large hand splayed protectively over her stomach. "I'm going to be better this time," he whispered in the darkness. "I won't let anything happen to you." "Ethan, what happened to Sarah wasn't your fault. She was too delicate, and I didn't see it, didn't protect her enough." His voice broke. "But you're strong. I can feel it." "We're both strong," Charlotte corrected, "and we'll face this together." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the spring. Charlotte bloomed, her skin glowing, her happiness evident in every movement. Ethan was attentive to the point of being overprotective, barely letting Charlotte lift anything heavier than a spoon. "I'm not fragile," she reminded him one afternoon when he'd carried her from the garden to the house despite her protests. "I'm growing a human being. That makes me stronger, not weaker." "I know." Ethan set her down carefully. "But you're carrying my child, our child. I can't help wanting to keep you safe." Charlotte softened, taking his hand and placing it on her growing belly. "Feel that? That's our baby telling you I'm strong enough for this." The baby kicked hard against his palm, and Ethan's face transformed with wonder. That's our child." "Our child," Charlotte confirmed, her heart full, already strong like their father. As her belly grew round and full, Charlotte continued to sing to the horses. They seemed fascinated by the change in her, often pressing their noses gently against her swollen stomach as if greeting the baby within. "They know," Ethan said one afternoon, watching Shadow nuzzle Charlotte's belly. "Animals always know." Charlotte started preparing for the baby's arrival. She sewed tiny gowns and blankets, while Ethan built a beautiful wooden cradle, carving horses into the headboard. "It's perfect," Charlotte breathed when he showed her the finished piece. "For our perfect child," Ethan replied, kissing her forehead. In July, as Charlotte's time drew near, Ethan became increasingly anxious. He barely left her side, watching her constantly for any sign of distress. "I'm fine," Charlotte assured him for the 100th time. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time." "Not my woman. Not my baby." Ethan's jaw was tight with worry. "I can't lose you, Charlotte. I won't survive it." Charlotte took his face in her hands. "Look at me. I'm healthy. The baby's healthy. Dr. Henderson says everything is perfect. You have to trust that." "I'm trying." Ethan closed his eyes. "God, I'm trying." When Charlotte's labor began on a hot August afternoon, Ethan went pale. She'd been hanging sheets when the first pain hit, strong enough to make her gasp. "Ethan!" she called, and he came running from the barn. "Is it time?" His voice was strained. "I think so." Another pain gripped her, and Charlotte breathed through it. "You should fetch Dr. Henderson." "I'm not leaving you." "Ethan, we need the doctor." "I'll send Tom's son. I'm staying right here." And he did. Through the long hours of labor, Ethan never left Charlotte's side. He held her hand, wiped her brow, and whispered encouragement even as his face grew pale with worry. When the pains grew intense, he let her grip his hand so hard she knew she must be hurting him, but he never flinched. "You're doing so well," he murmured, pressing kisses to her damp forehead. "So strong, my love, so brave." Dr. Henderson arrived and examined Charlotte, his expression reassuring. "Everything's progressing nicely, Mrs. Dawson. Won't be too much longer now." But as the hours stretched on and the sun began to set, Charlotte's strength started to wane. The pains were overwhelming and she began to cry. "I can't do this," she sobbed. "It's too much." "Yes, you can." Ethan's voice was firm, his eyes fierce with faith in her. "You're the strongest person I know. You can do anything." "Stay with me," Charlotte begged. "Always." Ethan kissed her hand. "I'll always stay with you." And when their daughter was born, as the last light of day faded, perfect and healthy, with her mother's eyes and her father's dark hair, Ethan wept openly. "She's beautiful," he whispered, holding the tiny bundle with infinite care. "Just like her mother." Charlotte watched her husband cradling their daughter, this gentle giant reduced to tears of joy, and felt her heart might burst with love. "What should we name her?" Charlotte asked, exhausted but happy. Ethan looked down at his daughter, then at Charlotte. "Grace, because that's what you both are." "Grace? I never deserved, but received anyway." "Grace Dawson." Charlotte tested the name, watching her daughter's tiny face. "It's perfect," Dr. Henderson smiled. "A healthy baby girl and a healthy mother. Congratulations to you both." After the doctor left, and Charlotte was cleaned up and resting comfortably, Ethan sat beside the bed, still holding Grace with a reverence that made Charlotte's eyes well up. "Thank you," he said softly, "for her, for surviving, for being strong enough to give me this gift." "We made her together," Charlotte reminded him. "She's ours." That night, Ethan barely slept. He sat in the rocking chair beside the bed, Grace in his arms, watching over both his girls, as if he could protect them from the entire world through will alone. The months after Grace's birth were challenging, but wonderful. Ethan proved to be a devoted father, rising in the night to bring the baby to Charlotte for feeding, changing diapers without complaint, and spending hours just holding his daughter and marveling at her. Charlotte would often wake to find him standing by the window, Grace in his arms, talking to her about the horses and the farm and all the things he would teach her. "She can't understand you yet," Charlotte said one morning, amused. "She will someday," Ethan replied, "and I want her to know her father's voice, want her to know she's loved from the very first moment." When Grace was 3 months old, Charlotte returned to singing to the horses, the baby strapped to her chest in a sling Ethan had fashioned. The horses were gentle around the infant, as if they understood she was precious. One afternoon, Charlotte found Ethan in the barn, showing 6-month-old Grace the new foals. "And this one is Hope," Ethan was saying, his voice soft. "He was born the night your mama sang to his mother. We thought we might lose them both, but your mama's voice saved them." Charlotte's heart swelled. This man, this beautiful, gentle giant of a man, was hers, and she was his. "There you are," Ethan said, spotting her. "We were just having a conversation about horses, weren't we, Grace?" The baby gurgled happily, and Charlotte laughed. "She's going to be a horse girl, just like her father." "Nothing wrong with that." Ethan stood, cradling Grace against his chest. "Come here." Charlotte moved into his embrace, the three of them standing together in the golden afternoon light streaming through the barn windows. "Do you remember what Tom said that first day?" Ethan asked quietly. "About my horses waiting their whole lives for you." "I remember. I think I was waiting too. I just didn't know it until you arrived." He kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for coming to Montana, Charlotte. Thank you for giving me a second chance at happiness." "And Dame, thank you for seeing me," Charlotte replied, her voice thick with emotion, "for making me believe I was worth loving." "You were always worth loving." Ethan tipped her chin up to look at him. "Always." As they stood together, their daughter between them, the horses gathered at the barn door, drawn by the sound of their voices. Charlotte began to sing, and Ethan joined in, his deep voice harmonizing with hers. Grace laughed, reaching her tiny hands toward the horses, and Charlotte thought about how far she'd come. From lonely, rejected spinster to beloved wife and mother, from invisible to cherished. "I love you," she told Ethan, the words never losing their power no matter how many times she said them. "I love you too." Ethan's arms tightened around both his girls. Forever. And Charlotte knew, with absolute certainty, that forever wasn't nearly long enough. The years passed in a blur of happiness. Grace grew into a beautiful child with her father's gentleness and her mother's voice. By the time she was 3, she could often be found in the corrals, singing to the horses just like her mother had taught her. "She's a natural," Ethan said one afternoon, watching Grace fearlessly approach Shadow, who had become completely docile around the little girl. "She has your gift with them," Charlotte replied, "and your heart." When Grace was 4, Charlotte discovered she was pregnant again. This time, there was no fear, only joy. Ethan was thrilled, though still protective. "I want a brother," Grace announced one evening at supper, "to help Papa with the horses." "We'll love whatever the good Lord gives us," Charlotte said, though she secretly hoped for a boy too. Their son was born on a crisp October morning, his arrival quick and relatively easy compared to Grace's lengthy labor. He came into the world with a loud cry and a head full of dark hair. "He's got lungs like a mountain lion," Dr. Henderson laughed. "And his mother's determination," Ethan added, cradling the baby with the same wonder he'd shown with Grace. They named him Thomas, after the kind man who'd brought Charlotte to the farm all those years ago. Tom Bradley cried when they told him, honored beyond words. "He'll need a strong name," Tom said, holding little Thomas carefully, "to live up to." Grace adored her baby brother from the first moment, insisting on helping with everything. She sang to him just as Charlotte sang to the horses, and young Thomas would quiet immediately at the sound of his sister's voice. Charlotte and Ethan added 2 more children to their family. A son they named Thomas, after the kind man who'd brought Charlotte to the farm, and another daughter they called Hope, after the colt who'd been born that pivotal night. Two years after Thomas's birth, another daughter arrived, Hope, named for the colt whose birth had marked the beginning of Charlotte and Ethan's love story. Hope was tiny and delicate, with blonde curls and eyes that seemed to see everything. 3 children, Charlotte marveled one evening as Ethan helped put them all to bed. "We've been blessed beyond measure." "You've blessed me beyond measure," Ethan corrected, pulling her close once all 3 children were asleep. The farm prospered beyond their wildest dreams. Word spread about Ethan's way with horses and Charlotte's healing songs, and people came from 3 counties to buy Dawson horses. Ethan's reputation as a man who could rehabilitate the most damaged animals grew, and wealthy ranchers began sending him their most difficult cases. But with prosperity came challenges. One spring, a neighboring rancher named Jackson tried to buy Ethan's land, offering an enormous sum. "You could move to San Francisco," Jackson urged. "Live like a king with that money." Ethan didn't even hesitate. "This land is my children's heritage. It's not for sale." "Everyone has a price, Dawson." "Not for this." Ethan's voice was firm. "My wife made this house a home. My children are growing up here. No amount of money is worth giving that up." After Jackson left, clearly frustrated, Charlotte hugged Ethan tight. "Thank you for choosing us over wealth. Charlotte, you are my wealth. You and the children. Everything else is just details." But success never changed them. Ethan was still the gentle giant who spent hours with frightened animals. Charlotte still sang while she cooked. And every evening, no matter how busy the day, they sat together on the porch and watched the sunset, their children playing in the yard, the horses grazing peacefully in the gathering dusk. Charlotte also realized her dream of opening a small school. They converted the old barn, adding windows and desks, and Charlotte began teaching the valley's children 3 days a week. Grace was her star pupil, already reading at a level far beyond her years. "You're a natural teacher," Ethan told Charlotte one evening as he watched her prepare lessons. "Just like you're a natural mother, wife, and everything else you do." "I learned from watching you," Charlotte replied. "You taught me that patience and love can heal almost anything." The school grew, and soon Charlotte had 12 students of varying ages. Ethan built additional rooms, and they hired a young woman named Rebecca to help with the younger children. "This community needed this," Tom Bradley said at the school's dedication ceremony. "These children needed someone to believe in them, just like Ethan's horses needed Charlotte's songs." On their 10th wedding anniversary, Ethan surprised Charlotte with a trip to the territorial capital. They left the children with Tom and Mary and spent 3 days in a real hotel, eating in fancy restaurants and attending a theater performance. "I want you to know you haven't been forgotten," Ethan said as they danced in the hotel ballroom. "That you're not just a mother and teacher and farmer's wife. You're Charlotte, and you deserve beautiful things." "I have beautiful things," Charlotte replied, looking up at him. "I have you. I have our children. I have a life I never dreamed possible." But that night in their hotel room, away from the children for the first time in years, they made love with a passion that reminded them both that they were still lovers as well as partners. "I love you more now than the day we married," Ethan whispered as they lay tangled together afterward. "How is that possible?" Charlotte asked. "We've been through so much, sleepless nights, sick children, hard times." "Because you've been beside me through all of it," Ethan replied. "Every challenge we've faced has shown me more of your strength, your kindness, your beautiful heart. How could I not love you more?" They returned home to find the children had made welcome home signs, and Grace had organized a special supper. As Charlotte looked around the table at her family, Grace now 8 and helping serve, Thomas 6 and chattering about the horses, Hope 4 and giggling at her brother's stories, she felt her heart might burst. "What's wrong, Mama?" Grace asked, noticing her mother's tears. "Nothing's wrong, sweetheart," Charlotte assured her. "I'm just so happy I can't contain it all." The seasons continued their cycle, summers of long days and children playing in the creek, autumns of harvest and preparation for winter, winters of cozy evenings by the fire and snow-covered beauty, springs of renewal and new foals being born. Grace turned 10 and announced she wanted to train horses just like her father. Ethan beamed with pride and began teaching her seriously, showing her the patience and gentleness that had made him legendary. Thomas, at 8, showed a talent for building and began helping Ethan with farm repairs. His small hands were already skilled with tools, and he had an engineer's mind for solving problems. Hope, at 6, was the family's musician. She'd inherited Charlotte's voice and took to the piano Ethan had surprised them with one Christmas. Her music filled the house, blending with Charlotte's singing to create a symphony of family. But life wasn't without its sorrows. When Grace was 12, Shadow, the grey mare who'd been one of the first to trust Charlotte, grew old and sick. Charlotte sang to her every day, and when the time came to let her go, the entire family gathered around. "Thank you for teaching us about trust," Charlotte whispered to the old mare, "for showing us that even damaged hearts can heal." Shadow passed peacefully, her head in Charlotte's lap, and they buried her on the hill overlooking the valley. Grace carved a marker, and they planted wildflowers over the grave. "Death is part of life on a farm," Ethan told his tearful children. "But love never dies. Shadow will always be part of our family's story." When Charlotte turned 40, she worried she might be getting too old, too worn. She looked in the mirror one morning and saw grey threads in her honey-coloured hair, lines around her eyes. But Ethan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You're even more beautiful now than the day you arrived." "Liar," Charlotte said, but she smiled. "Truth," Ethan corrected. "Those lines are from laughing with our children. That grey is wisdom earned. And your eyes," he turned her to face him, "your eyes still stop my heart every time you look at me." He kissed her then, deep and thorough, and Charlotte felt young again, remembering the first time he'd kissed her on the porch all those years ago. Their love hadn't dimmed with time. It had deepened, becoming something richer and more complex than the initial passion. They knew each other's rhythms now, could communicate with a glance, finished each other's sentences. "Do you ever regret it?" Ethan asked one evening, his arm around Charlotte's shoulders. "Leaving Boston? Everything you knew?" Charlotte looked at her life, her husband, her children, her home, the horses who still gathered when she sang, the vast Montana sky stretching above them. "Not for a single moment," she said. "This was always where I was meant to be, with you." Ethan pulled her closer. "The horses knew. That first day, when they came to hear you sing. They knew you were the one we'd all been waiting for. Maybe I was waiting too." Charlotte smiled. "Waiting to find my home. And did you? Find it, I mean." Charlotte looked up at her husband, this man who'd shown her what love truly meant. "I found more than home, Ethan. I found everything." As the sun set over the Montana Valley, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Charlotte began to sing. The horses lifted their heads, listening. The children stopped their playing to join in. And Ethan, his deep voice blending with his family's, added his harmony to the song. This, Charlotte thought, was what happiness sounded like, what home felt like, what love looked like when it was given freely and received with gratitude. She'd come to Montana with nothing but a worn carpetbag and fading hope. She'd found a lonely farmer and his lonely horses, all of them waiting for something they couldn't name, but she'd given them her voice, her heart, her love. And in return, they'd given her everything she'd ever dreamed of, and more than she'd ever dared to hope for. Charlotte Reed Dawson had finally found where she belonged, and in the arms of her gentle giant, surrounded by the horses who'd recognized her before she'd recognized herself, she'd found her forever home.